My mother married me off for reputation. What I heard my fiancé say changed everything. My mother always said love was optional. Respect is permanent, she'd say, sipping tea from porcelain cups she couldn't afford but insisted on owning. And reputation is everything. I was raised on polished lies, pressed dresses, and the constant reminder that our family name, already fragile, had to be protected at all costs. I learned early that my opinions were negotiable, but my obedience was non-negotiable. So when my mother told me I was getting married, she didn't ask. She announced it. Evan Whitmore, she said proudly, as if she were presenting a trophy. His family is well connected, old money. This marriage will secure our standing. I remember staring at her across the kitchen table, my coffee going cold. I barely know him, I said. You don't need to know him, she replied sharply. You need to represent him. That was the moment I understood. I wasn't a daughter. I was a social investment. The perfect fiancé. Evan was flawless on paper. Harvard MBA, investment firm partner, charity board member. A smile that disarmed rooms and eyes that made people trust him instantly. Mothers adored him. Men admired him. Women envied me. And I tried. God, I tried to convince myself I was lucky. He brought flowers to my office, remembered my favorite wine, called my mother Mrs. Caldwell with old-school charm. But something always felt rehearsed. His laughs came a beat too late. His compliments sounded memorized. And whenever money came up, his eyes sharpened, not with greed, but calculation. Still, my mother was thrilled. Do you know how many doors this marriage will open for us? She whispered one night. People like Evan don't marry girls like you unless it's meant to be. Girls like me. Educated, independent, self-made. But apparently still beneath him. The night everything shattered. 3 weeks before the wedding, Evan hosted a private engagement dinner at his penthouse overlooking Manhattan. Crystal glasses, candlelight, a view worth more than my childhood home. Midway through the night, I excused myself to the restroom. That's when I heard his voice. The door to the study was slightly open. I wasn't eavesdropping at first, I was passing by, but then I heard my name. She has no idea, Evan said, laughing softly. Another man chuckled. You sure the accounts will be clean by the wedding? Completely, Evan replied. Once the marriage happens, everything shifts. Her name gives legitimacy. Old family, clean record, it's perfect. My heart slammed into my ribs. What about the offshore transfers? The other man asked. They're already hidden, Evan said calmly. Shell companies, crypto layers. By the time regulators catch on, I'll be untouchable. I pressed my hand against the wall to stay upright. And the fiancé, the man asked casually. She won't talk. Evan laughed again. She won't even understand. I did cry. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I stood there in silence while my entire future collapsed. My marriage wasn't about love or status. It was about laundering fraud through my name. I walked back into the dining room with a smile so convincing even I believed it. That night, Evan kissed my forehead and said, I can't wait to build a life with you. And I smiled back, because I had already decided something. I wasn't going to cancel the wedding. I was going to finish it. Playing the fool. Over the next weeks, I became the woman Evan expected. Quiet, agreeable, trusting. I signed documents he slid across the table, after secretly copying every page. I listened more than I spoke. I watched which calls he took privately. I memorized names, dates, companies. And I recorded everything. I also did something my mother never expected. I hired my own lawyer. Not the family one, not Evan's recommendation. A woman named Claire Maddox, federal-level white-collar crime specialist. She listened to my recordings once. Then she leaned back and said, You're marrying a criminal. I know, I replied. I want to destroy him. She smiled slowly. Then we do it right. The wedding. The ceremony was featured in society columns. Power couple unites two prestigious families, one headline read. My mother cried as she adjusted my veil. You've done so well, she whispered. You've saved us. I looked at her and realized something painful. She would have sacrificed me without hesitation. The vows were flawless. Evan slipped the ring on my finger with practiced tenderness. And when he said, I do, he believed he had won. The collapse. 3 days later, federal agents raided Evan's firm. Bank accounts frozen, assets seized, partners arrested. By the end of the week, Evan was on every financial news channel. Major investment scandal, they called it. I watched from our penthouse as his world burned. When he confronted me, eyes wild, voice shaking, I handed him the divorce papers. You used my name, I said calmly. Now it's on the record. His face drained of color. You knew, he whispered. Yes, I replied, and I documented everything. My mother's silence. My mother didn't speak to me for months. When she finally did, her voice was smaller. You humiliated us, she said. No, I replied. I saved myself. And for the first time in my life, I didn't apologize. The ending they didn't expect. Evan took a plea deal. I testified. His sentence was long enough to erase his reputation forever. And me. I kept my name, my freedom, my voice. Now, when people ask if I regret the marriage, I smile. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't leaving. It's letting them think they've won. And then taking everything they tried to steal. Evan thought the arrest was a mistake. That was the funny part. When the agents first dragged him out of his glass office, he still wore that calm, entitled smile. The one men like him learn early, the one that says this will go away. He called me that night from a holding room. You need to call your lawyer, he said, voice tight. There's been a misunderstanding. I put the phone on speaker. I already spoke to mine, I replied. Silence. Then carefully, why would you need a lawyer? I looked out over the city skyline, the same skyline he'd once promised would be ours. Because, I said, my husband is under federal investigation. The line went dead. When the mask slipped, Evan was released on bail 2 days later. He came home furious. Not loud, not screaming. That kind of anger belongs to men who still believe they're in control. You went to the authorities, he said quietly. I didn't deny it. You destroyed everything, he continued, packing the living room. Do you have any idea who you just made enemies of? I met his eyes. You destroyed everything, I corrected. I just turned on the lights. His expression changed then, something ugly crawling to the surface. You were nothing before me, he snapped. Your mother knew it, that's why she gave you to me. That hurt more than I expected. But pain sharpens clarity. I was never yours, I said. You just underestimated me. That was the last private conversation we ever had. The trial everyone watched. The case exploded. News vans, analysts' speculation. How did the wife not know? Was she involved? Did she benefit? That question haunted me. Until the prosecution announced their key witness. Me. I remember stepping into the courtroom, flashbulbs popping, Evan already seated, looking smaller than I remembered. He didn't look at me. I took the stand calmly and told the truth. About the Overheard confession. About the shell companies. About the documents he pressured me to sign. About the recordings. When his defense attorney tried to paint me as a gold digger, I smiled. Sir, I said evenly, if I wanted money, I wouldn't have destroyed a man worth millions. The courtroom went silent. My mother's breaking point. My mother sat in the gallery every day. Watching. Judging. Until one afternoon, during a recess, she cornered me. You could have stopped this, she hissed. You could have handled it quietly. So he could hurt other people, I asked. So he wouldn't be a joke, she snapped. I looked at her, the woman who raised me to be polite, obedient, silent. And I finally said what I'd swallowed for years. You didn't want a daughter, I said softly. You wanted proof you mattered. Her mouth opened. No words came out. That was the day she realized she'd lost control. The verdict. Evan was found guilty on all major counts. Wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering. The sentence was devastating. Years. Enough years that his name would never recover. When the judge asked if I wished to make a statement, I stood. I entered this marriage believing silence was strength, I said. I learned too late that silence only protects the powerful. I turned to Evan. You thought my name would clean your crimes, I continued. Instead, it exposed them. For the first time, he looked at me. And I saw it. Fear. The ending, what freedom really looks like. The divorce was finalized quietly. No settlement. No money. I didn't want a cent touched by his hands. People said I was foolish. I knew better. I moved cities. Started over. Built something that belonged to me alone. And my mother. She tells people now that she always knew I was strong. I let her talk. Because strength doesn't need witnesses. Sometimes, late at night, I think about the girl who stood in that hallway, listening to the man she was about to marry confess his crimes. She could have run. She could have warned him. She could have stayed silent. Instead, she chose something harder. Truth. And revenge that didn't ruin her soul. If there's one thing I learned, it's this. Never mistake a woman's silence for ignorance. And never build your lies on her name. Because if she decides to speak, everything changes.